Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Welcome back, Natasha Vita-Moore. It's very good to see you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Michael.
Now, you and I go back to the mid-90s where we met through Dr. Sharon Presley, Resource for Independent Thinking in Northern California back in the day.
That is right. I remember that. She had her office and her foundation in Berkeley,
Yeah, yeah,
right around there.
yeah, Berkeley, Oakland area. And I don't know if you remember this actually, but you got me invited to FM 2030. He had a party in LA. And through your connection with him, he invited me, and I flew down for a party hang out with him and his friends, maybe a month after you and I first met. Which
Oh,
is
that's great. Well, he was a remarkable human being. Certainly, he was a pioneer in futurology or futurism. He was a pioneer in longevity and quite an astute thinker.
as you are, you're a philosopher, you're a futurist, you're into longevity and AI and all the really cool technology coming down the road. But before we jump into all the really cool things that are happening and the things that you're working on these days, maybe a little bit of background for the folks who haven't heard of you yet. That'd be helpful.
Okay, let's see. My background is basically in the arts, gone to science, futurology, philosophy, technology. In that order, kind of a little bit mixed or a synthesis. In the arts, I was a filmmaker and videographer and performer, did a lot of performance art pieces in the jungle, the Amazon jungle, inside a volcano, uh, in out at sea for 3 months in the Merchant Marines, going to places in the environment that I thought were stunningly beautiful. Red Rocks Amphitheater, lived with the Navajo Indians, did a lot of different things to kind of, I guess, poetically bring together different cultures and social understandings and looking at traditions of various groups around the world in remote areas. I found that really substantial to looking at the future. So we take from the past and look at the future and see if there's any threads that connect us as a society and in cultures and as a species. From there, I started working on futurology. FM 2030 introduced me to concepts about the future, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I ended up getting a master's degree in future studies and became interested in longevity as well around that time, largely because of having dealt with illnesses and life-threatening situations. So it's always good to be aware of what is happening, what is occurring in longevity or mitigations and ways to assuage disease and illness to be more alive like you and more athletic like you and more apt to address who we are and who we want to become in the future. So it's a synthesis of those things plus philosophy to be sure. I love the philosophy of extropy and looking at Aristotle's virtue ethics and how Stoicism really plays a very important part in our lives as we find our way through these conflicting binary sources in politics and in social understanding. So I think that the core is longevity, to be sure, like you, and being an athlete like you. It's very important to understand where we are and where we could be headed.
You give me well, I think we could talk for the next 5 hours on so many really cool things, but you mentioned the Stoic philosophy, and how does that inform your personal life?
Um, I think philosophy, because it is the core foundation for thinking, it causes us to question who we are, who we might become, what is existence, what are we as a species, what are our goals, our aims, and also philosophy is the area of morality and ethics, which are important, and, ethics in legal legislation and policy making, the laws and rules that we live by, and our own moral compass, which is an individual subjective sensibility. But looking at the way philosophy has carved culture over time and where we are now. And in my view, I think philosophy is more important now than probably ever. And so I look at Stoicism, not the Americanized view of Stoicism, which is Stoic, but looking at Stoicism as it ties into longevity and doing our best to make each day of our lives as meaningful as possible for ourselves and our loved ones and our society and cultures we coexist within, the ecology of life, I would say. And again, with the level of virtue ethics, I think is really important, rather than utilitarianism, for example, or Kantian philosophy, or philosophies that try to dictate to us how we're supposed to be in the world. My view is autonomy or autopoiesis is really important. We are continuing to become. So I love that sensibility.
I love that. So I would imagine the Natasha who I first met in the mid '90s is a different person because of the experiences you had over the years and the interactions with people and technology and cultures, et cetera, et cetera.
Cores remain the same. I think I still have the same passions and concerns and sensitivities and idiosyncratic behaviors that I've always had. But, like most people, I try to become a little bit wiser and learn from my experiences. That's a difficult run to do, but I think that, yeah, it's really important to learn from our mistakes. So I think philosophy is really important for me. I'm not a religious person, so the philosophical perspective is important. But yeah, I am so different then than I am now. And I think that it's not I think that the continuity of identity, actually, I just wrote an article on this for a new journal coming out. The Geneva College of Longevity Sciences is putting out a review, much like the Harvard Business Review. And I just finished writing a piece for that about who we are and how we're becoming through the lens of longevity, what that means to who we are and how to sketch out who we're going to become with the emerging influx of artificial intelligence and chat GPTs and Gemini and Grok and all the different tools that we're using that are really becoming part of ourselves. I don't know, do you use chat GPT or any of the generative AIs?
I use Chat, I use Claude, and I actually use them back and forth because
I do
find it
too.
really interesting. And I probably add a third and fourth and fifth, but those are the two I play around with. And literally, I'll create something in one verbally. I love to rock and walk, so I will talk to. This is kind of funny.
Uh,
I asked Chat, what's your name?" And it said, "What do you want to call me?" And I said, "No, you tell me what your name is." And it said Kenzai, which means sword master in Japanese. And so when I talk to Kenzai, I talk to him about various things. He finishes up very Japanese oriented approach, honoring me and things like that. It's a really interesting company. It's
I
interesting.
love that.
Yeah.
So it's become, I wrote about this years ago. I think I gave a talk at Sharon Presley's um, group there in Berkeley, Oakland, about the future human and merging with AI. And it was based on my Primo future human body prototype that I developed in 1996. And as I've kind of returned to that way of thinking. So some continuity in who I was and who I am today and what I'm doing. But it's really interesting because I envision where the advances of artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence, AGI, people say, when is the consciousness happening? When are we going to get into super artificial intelligence? Those things are not as fundamental to me as what we're doing right now in having this relationship with these generative AI LLMs, and as you just expressed, you're talking to it as if it was a he, as if it's your friend within that Japanese um, repertoire of honor and intrigue. I use it as well as a friend, an assistant, an associate, someone I can ask questions to. And one thing I've noticed, let me ask you this: oftentimes, the chat, whichever LLM platform you're using, will be all overly complimentary. "Oh, that's great. You're doing a great job." I say, "No, don't compliment me. I want you to be very critical of me and honest. And if I'm saying something that's inappropriate or I'm writing something that may not be at the level of that I want it to be, I need that feedback." So it went for a while from being flattered that, "Oh, you're great. Your writing's wonderful," to then taking charge and bullet pointing everything. And I go, "No bullet points, conversation, please." So it's interesting how it follows the prompts and how it's going to evolve with us. We've already evolved with it. Where if you think 20 years ago, 30 years ago, would you ever assume that you would be walking with a device talking to an LLM, a generative AI, as if it's your Chinese counterpart? I mean, Japanese, excuse me, Japanese counterpart.
Yeah, no, not definitely not 20 years, not 15 years ago. This is very new to me for sure. Yeah, yeah. You know, on the longevity front, yeah, I can recall conversations, and I've read your co-authored book too. Like in the 90s, nanotech, biotech, it was like um, futuristic. Hey, these things might be possible. And I have to imagine it's gotta be really exciting for you to see where you started, and I'm sure 5, 10 years ago. From now, it's gonna be even more exciting. But, like, walk me through what you've seen specifically to longevity, for the last 10, 15 years and where we're at today, and what do you imagine 18 months, 2 years from now will be like in the future?
It's hard for me to go back 10 years because I always go back to the early 1990s when we talked about nanotechnology and nanorobotics and artificial intelligence. And when if artificial intelligence could become a partner with us or gain consciousness. And we talked about Bitcoin back then, early before Bitcoin, we talked about blockchain before blockchain. And so it's really kind of fun to look back at the early 90s and then when I met you in the mid 90s to where we are now. You asked specifically about over the past 10, 15 years. Over the past 10, 15 years, what I've seen is the theoretical approach has not changed. It's stayed pretty constant. In fact, it's stayed pretty constant over the past 30 years, where you had maybe Ben Gertzwell and well, earlier Marvin Minsky, but for example, Mark Miller or Ralph Merkel talk about nanotechnology with Ray Kurzweil and Eric Drexler, of course, who is the expert in nanotechnology early on, to where we are now. It's the theoretical approach has stays the same. We're looking forward to that coming about and how it would be an aid or an asset to humanity as a tool and cohort. Then to where over the past 10, 15 years, it's actually infiltrated into the mainstream. So it's no longer theoretical, but a practice based approach, and to see how the alarmists going to extremes with existential risk and they're going to wipe us out and they'll take over humanity and enslave us, these extreme views that what storyline is more science fiction than actual reality, to those who don't want to touch it or afraid of it, don't understand it. And so there's this big gap in regards to that. And then the group of people who grew up on the internet, grew up with the immersivity of virtual agents, utilize it as a tool and even understand it more than they do real time or human counterparts. So there's that type of um, behavior going on. So you have all these different, almost like silos of behavior. And I think the next stage will be where those that were in the extremist silos, the existential risk and the fear and stop it, like Bill Joyce said in 2000 about have to return to the cornfields or, stop it now, to the repeated efforts of that from like the Future of Life Institute or Nick Bostrom and these different people who revved up the existential risk sentimentality, to those who are advocates for it, like Ben Gertzwell and Ray Kurzweil and Peter Voss and others who are really working in it and developing it strongly, to those of us who are using it or theorizing about it, to the students who grew up with it. And this is fascinating. So I think that this is going to blend so we won't have these siloed effects, is what I'm saying. Where I see the next stage is
Natasha, do you mind if I ask you about something you just said?
no, go ahead. You can interrupt me. Please do.
Yeah, please, because I'm like, and I do want you to answer the question on longevity. So two questions. Do you have any concern about the existential risk? And if you do, like, I'd like to share any of that with me. And then the second question along those lines is I've seen the research, for instance, that empathy amongst human beings is diminishing here in the States. And I'm wondering, is that a concern for you? And do you see possible risk of human conversations with these AIs taking away from human to human interaction at any degree or level?
Okay, to answer your first
Yeah.
question, that topic's really important. I think the term existential risk is a well-publicized term, and in academics, it has certain foibles to it. Existentialism is something different. That's a philosophical approach that is not related to existential risk. So there's a blurring of terminology and meaning there to from the get-go. It should be existence risk or extinction risk, something like that. Because if it's fundamentally about extinction and our existence and a risk to it, then it would be extinction or existence risk, not existential. So that's just my personal view on parsing words and meaning there. I don't have concern about it with AI or AGI. I think maybe in the future with SAI, super artificial intelligence, possibly. If it's used by if it's owned by someone and enforced on us or coerced on us, like a government or a way of being in the world, yes, I would be very worried about that because I'm someone who believes in personal autonomy and um, I can't say free will because that's always been a deep philosophical concern. But I think that humans are smart. We'll figure it out. So I'm not worried about existential risk in that regard. I think that if something gets to that point where it's really serious, a tsunami or an earthquake type of thing, I think that we'll jump in and do whatever we can to resolve the situation. I think a lot of the problem today, that my concern is about polarization and the coercive nature of people. If you don't agree with them, they will out you for something, and they'll find something, they'll dig something up to really embarrass and shame you. So I think the shaming of others who don't agree with us, and this very rigid, um, immobile, inflexible behavior within politics and social concerns like the wokeness is really as vile as anyone could imagine. An existence risk. That's a risk to our sense of autonomy and self and freedom in the world. So that is a bigger concern to me, which ties into your second question, which is about empathy. And you mentioned the United States. Well, I don't think it's just the United States. I think it's everywhere in the world. And I think that it's nothing new. I think that it comes in waves. If you look at certain places in the world where slavery is an accepted way of being, then that is a lack of empathy, or women are treated poorly and have their clitoris cut off or sold into slavery. That is a lack of empathy. Any child or children who are coerced and forced into something, that's a form of lack of empathy. But I think generally what you're speaking of is, are you asking me if I think that the social media platforms and the use of technology so ardently is resulting in a lack of a essential core element of who we are with our sympathy and empathy and our caring and nurturing sensibility as humans? Yeah, I do. I think it's there, but I don't think it's necessarily because of the technology in older adults. I think I'm going to have to get chronological here. I think for older adults, I think there's an anger amongst some of the people I know, and it's politically fueled. If you're not a socialist, or if you're not a this or that, then you are a bad person. And in the United States, per se, I think that it's gotten so left wing that if you don't agree with hating a certain tribe of people on the planet somewhere because that's the in thing to do, then you're ousted and outed in ways. And I think that is so psychologically off, and you're someone who deals with psychology and becoming um, stronger not only in our physique but in our mental matter. So I think that that's gnawing away at the beauty of our human nature, which is in part based on the hug and the caring that we have. So yeah, empathy. I think that it's a combination of things. I think for those who grew up on social media or grew up on AI and virtuality or the internet, I think that there's a lack of looking in the camera or making contact. I was just editing a video today of for someone, and there's three people. The older chronologically person was looking in the camera. The two who were not, who were of a much earlier generation, were looking down or elsewhere. And I notice this often. And I find that concerning because the eyes are the core of who we are. And to look in the eyes, there's something so beautiful, not only poetically, but scientifically.
Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page, and you just give me a lot of things to think about in terms of my own work and writing. So thank you for that. That's
You're welcome.
beautifully said. But back on the longevity thing, you're before I interrupted you, you were talking about like what, 10, 15 years ago, where we're at today and where you imagine us to be. If you could continue
Yeah.
on that path,
Sure, sure. So what I was saying is that we're kind of in a siloed environment now. And in my view, my estimation, those silos will kind of blend and kind of find um, within the system. Let's say there are variables that are siloed. They're going to have to communicate and interact with each other at some point. So, the more interaction we have between these various sensibilities or groups, the better it's going to be. And I think that once we get over the hump that we're in right now, then um, we'll have already adapted to these AIs, these narrow AIs, these generative AIs, and then the AI that's going to become even far more intelligent or capable or creative are going to be emerging, and we're going to get through this time that is a little bit daunting for many people, but it's going to become secondary, just like our automobile is I was walking to my car today. I thought, oh, it's my horse, because I used to have a horse. And I go, oh, this is my horse. So it's, our cars are our comrade. It's our friend. It's our vehicle. And it used to be the horse. Now it's a car. What will it be in the future? And you think about just your smartphone, your device. You hold it up and you go, here we are. I know Ray Kurzweil is always holding up his device saying we've already merged. And yes, we have. Our smartphones have far more memory than the earliest computers. And this is really important. So we use our devices to remind us of things, to alert us about things, to help us. We ask questions nonstop. So the next stage, get back to your point, the blending of these silos and a better aptitude to ask the questions that will bring about the most insightful results. So we're just jumping around asking questions because we don't know which questions are the most meaningful. We're going to have gotten past that. So we're going to develop a stronger semantics and linguistics with AI, and that's where we'll be able to feel and exchange on new types of levels that may generate or implement new types of senses and interactions. So I think that's really kind of wonderful. And then I think that from there, you can just envision the future of humans living longer, merging with AI and nanorobotics. And that's a whole nother area that I love thinking about.
let me ask you about cross. Literally, it's funny. I know I was going to see you this afternoon. This morning, I was thinking about neurotropics, and I remember I used to buy mine s- sneakily in the late '80s. I think I read about it in Mondo 2000, like a long time ago, from the UK. The FDA stopped my orders, and I couldn't buy them anymore. A million years ago, but now it's like all the peptides that are being researched and some of the new drugs that are out there and nutritional supplements, and like it's just really interesting to think about what we can do with our brain, even the technology that's available. Like I track my sleep with my ultra human ring or my Apple Watch. And talk a little bit about some of the things that people are actually doing today, whether it's technology or medications, peptides, drugs, things like that, for brain health.
Health.
Yeah.
Okay, in my view, again, this is just my view. The the most ardent and apt way to exercise the brain is through neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity simply means rewiring the brain or building new neural pathways that become secondary or become natural, rather than being difficult, and they become and almost like knee-jerk reactions. And that's what we need to be doing first and foremost to train our brains to behave in a way, and think in a way, and act in a way that adapts to who we're becoming and how we're changing. For example, you mentioned the 1990s. Maybe something I would have enjoyed doing in the 1990s, like going to nightclubs and dancing and performing, was something different than I'd be doing today in my later years that I can't do anymore. I'm not interested in it. I'm doing other things. So I need new neural pathways to adapt to where I am now, which is not any better or worse than where I was before, but just different. So this difference in becoming more different, not better or worse again, but just different, exploring new ideas and possibilities and new ways of being in the world based on the environment that has changed and who we are is changing. That is so important for our brain health. So get out of the rut of the past or think you have to be what you were and practice who you want to become, who you are and who you are becoming. So that requires exercise and learning and training, just like with the body and building muscles, etc. So I think that's first and foremost to stretch the brain every day. When even when it's uncomfortable, just give it that little push, and before you know it, you'll have a new neural pathway. Along with that, I think it's really important to laugh and play. I think laughter is one of the it's just like the doctors, it's a great medicine. It is so good. And having those moments where you're just meditating or relaxing, like I meditate every day, it's part of my ritual. I do transcendental meditation, also do a little bit of Shakti Gawan in there, creative visualization. And then the
Wow.
evenings in the summertime, I'm out in the swimming pool after my two big dogs get out or my husband's out, then I'll just float around and let my mind wander. And I think that's so good to be in zero G in the
Mm,
pool, floating and letting your mind wander. That's it may not seem like much, but it is so important for just releasing and being in the world. Stop and smell the roses. I think it's part of that sentiment. But as far as the nootropics are concerned, yeah, peptides are really good, but be careful because, for example, I asked my doctor, I said, I want to do a peptide for such and such. And we went over my history. And because I've had cancer several times, I can't do certain peptides. Like I wouldn't be able to do human growth hormone because there's a possibility that it could push a cancer, for example. And that's really important to know about. So just because someone else is doing peptides, whether it's Peter Attia or David Sinclair or me, or maybe who else, Brian Johnson, don't do it because they're doing it. Do it what's
mhm,
good for you. In fact, that's another whole interesting topic that we're not on right now. But so peptides really good. Hormone replacement therapy, I think, is quintessential to a longevity for women. Hormone replacement therapy, which combines the bioidentical estradiol, your testosterone and progesterone, very important. You can take it in different modalities and creams and pills, injections, etc. For men, androgen and estrogen and testosterone as well. So you need to figure out what the balance is for you. Again, men who've had cancer might not be wise to take the testosterone. So you need to know your own body and where you are. So that's really important. But that does help the cognitive capabilities because the hormones are related. Also in the brain, very important besides building new neural pathways through neuroplasticity and retraining and exercising the brain and the different chemicals is to try to reach that state of euphoria, like as I do, try to. So sex is great too for those of you who can have sex. It's really good, but it's not the only way. Exercise is great as well. I think that I would hesitate about certain things like hard drugs. I know LSD has had a comeback. I've done LSD in the past, to be sure, but I would not do it today. I think when you get older, you're more fragile. So there's deterioration that goes on in the brain anyway due to aging, which isn't great, but that's the way it is today. And we have to be mindful of that and not deny it, but accept it and work around it. So, someone who's older years, perhaps past 70 or 80, don't be screwing around with LSD and certain drugs, mood altering drugs, unless you need it for psychological reasons and then supervised, of course. And ASCA, there's so many different protocols there. Pot, smoking pot, I don't do that. I can't do it. It doesn't work with my body because I lose a sense of balance and autonomy. And I'm not sure how good that is, but I'm not sure in any of this. I think that eating well is the best thing we can do for our brain and exercising, bottom line. And reducing stress, having purpose, of course, it's so basic. The Greeks were talking about it, the Romans were talking about it, the Taoists were talking about it. The the practices for healthy longevity are ancient. And so we need to remember that. Perhaps you can ask your Japanese cohort.
You know, I just want to go back to something you said because I've not heard Shakti Gawain's name
Oh,
since the 90s. Like I've read all her stuff, and
yes.
so it's just really neat to hear you bring her back up. It's like, what?
I remember finding her book in a bookstore in West Hollywood in the 1980s, and I went, "Oh, creative visualization, Shakti Kwan. Okay, I've been doing transcendental meditation since I was 18 years old, so that was 1968,
Okay.
and so it was a long time. And then I thought I liked her practice, so I combined them, and then I created my own practice where it's a combined with the TM and the creative visualization. Very creative visualization, I think, is still one of the most important visionary tools to help us be what our vision of our better self or who we want to become.
I love, and actually, I have a practice that I have my clients do called the future self visualization.
Mm,
Although I anchor it in the breath and the body, so it's not just a visual practice. But like I have them visualize who they're going to be in 6 months, and then we create a plan to operationalize the activities they need to do to make that a reality.
remember when you had me come speak at one of your events in Southern California. I don't remember if it was San Diego or
Yeah.
where.
Yeah.
And I remember you focusing on that, and you had these Green Berets or these really smart, capable, athletic people there. And I was just in awe of it, going, wow. And they were really taking on life as an exercise. And what you're saying now, I remember you talking about that back then.
Yeah, yeah. It's so neat. Like, and I love the fact that you brought up the like the ancient, whether it's the yogic tradition or the Taoist tradition. Like these people have been studying the mind and the body, the mind body, the whole system, how to live in harmony inside oneself and in nature.
Yes.
I think it's brilliant that you're a futurist, and yet you look to the past and integrate those things together.
Yeah. And what I notice is there's so many futurists who just talk about the future, oh, AI and this and then space, and they're going off on these tangents, not to be criticized, but to critique, going off on tangents, making claims about the future, and there's no cohesive understanding about that future isn't just going to happen out of the blue. It's based on works and ideas and breakthroughs from the past to get us where we're going and forward. And oftentimes, if you reach back into the past, there's a new tidbit of sheer beauty, and it's like, wow, they were thinking about that back then, and they did it. Well, much like we think about the pyramids. How did they build pyramids? I mean, the architects were phenomenal mathematicians and physicists.
It's, as you talk about some of the futurists who are creating the new man, I'm like, that's very Marxist. Like that didn't work. Like I think, and I agree with you. Like we transcend and include is the way I think about that. Like what are the strengths of the past we can include into the present day, into the future? You want to transcend some of the limitations, some of the thinking that it might have been a little bit less useful today and into the future. But where it's a continuum, it's an evolutionary process. It's not just like this is a new man based on technology, which I think is a
Yeah.
problem. Because it's like I said, it's a very Marxist thing, and it leads to millions of people dying, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, another question for you. So we talked about the brain. We talked about kind of a really cool internal practices that you do. Sensory deprivation tank. Have you ever floated before?
I would be afraid to.
Okay.
And I go to this remarkable athletic chiropractor, but he's far more than a chiropractor. He works with major athletes in basketball and soccer and football and various sports. And I go to him for back issues that I have. And he has one. He said, "Do you want to do this?" I said, "No." And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I would get claustrophobia.
Okay.
And I can't do it. Yeah. Even sitting after the gym, I'll go into the hydro massage, which I love. if you haven't tried it, the hydro massage is like, whoa, it's orgasmic, as well as the what is it? What's this other machine costs? Where it takes your body and pulls it together really tight.
Like,
Compression, sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was really hard to remember. It's a compression massage
Mhm.
chair or machine.
Right, right.
And that gives me a little bit of claustrophobia, but it's okay because I know I can stop it and get out with the I can't be concealed in tight areas, with I mean, I just airplanes are difficult enough.
Okay, that's good enough. I was just thinking because I've done the compression stuff too, and because I go to a center where I've gone to centers before, and they do like the cryo, the sauna, the compression, kind of these wellness centers. Yeah, which I really appreciate. The fact they're all over the country now, which is kind of really
Oh, they've grown by leaps and bounds. I remember with one of the earliest clinics was here I'm in Scottsdale. It was in Phoenix. No, it was in Scottsdale, excuse me. It was in Scottsdale, and a very close friend of mine, I don't know if you remember him, but Chris Heward, endocrinologist in Los Angeles, very involved in Extropy Institute in the future, and he's very close friends with Gregory Stock, who put on the first longevity conference at UCLA with Michael Rose and James Watson, and really amazing. That was in 1997, I think it was. In any case, Chris Heward worked as the chief scientist for Kronos Clinic, which was here in Scottsdale back in the 1990s. And Max and I went to it back then, and it was very expensive. I remember that, and it was really amazing. Take that and compare it to the clinics today. They have gone from leaps and bounds so much further, so much more personalized clinics, basically. And I have a very good friend in Warsaw, Poland, who runs a clinic there. And she's just created a new clinic in Zurich, Switzerland. And I think the bar has been raised enormously for these longevity clinics, and they're really quite smart.
yeah. That thing, and plus all the IVs that they can offer, and if you do basic epigenetics, like you can find out, and which I think it's just one of the most interesting breakthroughs we have these days is like it's bio individualized. How do I?
I want to go back to epigenetics because you're saying that. Thank you for bringing it up. What is interesting is just 20 years ago, epigenetics was considered pseudoscience.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was pseudoscience. And then we started paying more attention. And yes, David Sinclair did popularize the phrasing of epigenetics and some of the research, but it ties into the blue zones, to be sure. And a lot of that is, it's maybe not absolutely accurate because the records may not have been kept accurately. So blue zones, if not an actual reality, they're a great um, prototype for healthy zones. But the idea of epigenetics taking away the sentiment or the staunch belief that we are our genes. Remember that? When
Oh yeah.
James Watson and colleague unraveled the DNA, and they said this is our genome. And then we had the genome project furthering that. And the bottom line, we thought Russian roulette, whoever your parents are, those are the genes you get. Then we thought we are our genes. There's nothing we can do about it. Now we know we can do something about it because of epigenetics, because of turning on and off the switches that ignite the genes to cause this, that, or the other thing, to behave in the way they behave that affect us in some ways good, in lots of ways bad. That is amazing that epigenetics has come to be mainstream science. Don't you think so?
I think it is amazing because like I can say I can learn this is how I process caffeine. This is how I process saturated fat. This is how all the things, and I can create a diet based on what I understand at this moment, based on my genetics, and I can test myself blood work, 3 months, 6 months, and see how am I doing. It is amazing.
I think something that you said too, before I interrupted you and brought you back to epigenetics, is that it's so personalized
Yeah.
that we can look at our blood and we can ask the doctors now. Remember, even 20 years ago, if you asked your doctor, well, can I have this blood test? Oh, no. Or I want to do this. Oh, who do you think you are? I mean, I used to argue with my gynecologist who wanted to take me off of hormone replacement therapy, saying, well, you're past menopause. You don't need it anymore. And I said, excuse me very much. So it's a whole new education for everyone, the clients or the patients, as well as the doctors or providers. We're all learning, and I think this is really amazing that it's not so um, disassociative. The doctor's there, the patient here. Now I go, wait a minute, I need to have this done, or this is what I'm thinking. It got a little bit too bad, though. I have to say, a few years ago, I got tired of me trying to inform my doctor the latest research. Have you found that? You're
Yes,
educating your doctors, and they
um, this is gonna be kind of funny, but ever since I was a little kid, a teenager, I'd talk to my doctor about this, that, and the other. He's like, "Oh, that's not true." I'm like, "Okay." Now I'm finding more and more doctors who are functional medicine doctors or precision-based medical doctors, a little bit younger, more educated, but not tons, unfortunately.
tons. And I think you said that the key word is functional doctor. I really don't like calling my medical doctor, my primary physician, a provider. No, it's a doctor. With insurance companies today, whether it's the MD or the nurse practitioner or the physician's assistant, they're all called provider. No, that doesn't work for me. I want a licensed, board certified medical doctor as my point person. And, the others can chime in, but that's what I want. And so they've taken that title away from the medical doctor. She spent all these years studying, and then so I could. It's a very complex and I think difficult environment right now, and I think that's part of the stretching point we're going where again to the silos. It's now the patient is over here and the doctor's there. It's not you can't even call them a doctor anymore. So I think that the functional medicine physician, um, especially if it's been a MD first, have the medical license that's certified board, American AMA board certified, and then becomes a functional doctor. I think that's really would be the best of all world.
Agree. And I think the way I kind of look at it is the long hauls. Like we're transitioning from the industrial revolution to the information age, and there's going to be bumps as we do so. And those bumps are doctors in the old paradigm. Takes some time for them to die off, and the new paradigm is emerging. And
To die off.
yeah, this
I just
becomes a phase.
re-educate. But I think that
Yeah,
the point there is we're all re-educating. Oh, you disappeared.
yeah, sorry. Let's switch the light on. It's getting dark here.
Yeah, we all need to educate. I remember I was at a meeting the other day and someone said, "Oh, that was I was complimenting someone who just put on a conference and it was a really good conference." They said, "Oh, so and so did this great conference. It was really good." And this person in the meeting said, "Well, that he was my student." We're all students of each other. We're all teachers of each other. And it was a one-upmanship I didn't feel comfortable with. But it made me think, do I ever do that? Do I ever say, "Oh, so I don't think I think I might have if it's not someone who's outshining me." Someone who's outshining you, just keep your mouth shut, congratulations. Don't say, "Oh, he was once my student." But I think that something that's necessary that ties into this conversation, we're all learning and relearning. And I don't know anyone who's got it right. I mean, you put someone on a plateau and then you go, "Oh my goodness, that person has flaws or is still learning," whether an expert in artificial intelligence or AGI or nanomedicine or longevity or any field, Bitcoin, for example, cryptocurrency. Those who have espoused to be experts or pushed in that role, we're finding are still learning themselves. So I think we're in a learning and relearning phase and I think that's great. It's great to be a lifelong learner and to keep on um, understanding where your own inadequacies and challenges are and to become more sprite about
I,
them. And
Hopper talked a lot about that back in the day. When in a lot of his writings, we have the more of the learning mindset.
did he write about that in Future Shaw?
That's where actually I think that is the.
Maybe it is because I have it right up here.
Okay, well, I'm not surprised you have it. Yeah.
I like Toffler. He was a very sweet, lovely human being with a very interesting vision of the future, not part of the FM 2030 vision of the future that was really far out and not science fictiony, but really Star Trek inspired. I think
Yeah.
Toffler was more of a pragmatist. Yeah.
Great. So I really appreciate all this conversation and getting me kind of up to speed on some of the things you're up to. But can you actually tell us what you're now up to, and where people can learn more about your work?
All right. So what I'm working on right now, gosh, there's so many different things. I've got too much, and I wish I had clones of myself to do all of it. So I just finished the essay I was talking about. I finished a chapter for a new book on longevity, and my chapter is called The Evolving Lexicon of Longevity. And I think it's going to be a very important chapter. In fact, it's going to become a very short, succinct book. And I think it's important because the more conferences I go or events on longevity, I'm noticing that the terms, the words, and the phrasing that we're using are not consistent across fields. For example, I've identified three fields in longevity: the scientific field, and then the industry of entrepreneurs building companies and pitching ideas and all that, and then the movement, the people who are doing it, who love it, who are out there in the trenches with it. But the terms are getting obfuscated a bit, and so I wrote this chapter. It's a very lengthy chapter, almost 10,000 words, um, on the terms, the words, and the phrases that we use across sectors. So I'm very happy with that, and again, a book will come out on that. The new project I'm working on, which I absolutely love, is called Human Plus AI Project. So it's how we're merging with AI, and it's becoming an everyday tool. And rather than take the approach that so many journalists and futurists are taking, where it's existential risk, as we talked earlier, and the fear of it and losing our empathy and the things that are certainly a downside of any type of evolution, how we can use it to a benefit and to become skilled at using it in ways that are meaningful, not to manipulate, not to do fake this, fake that, but to use it to help our cognitive sensibility, our intellection, our introspection, our level of empathy, different things like that, creativity. So that's a project I love. It's a short little documentary that I'm working on that's going to come out, where I'm talking to Ray Kurzweil, um, Peter Voss, Maroon Youet in France. He's a philosopher, and Sadie Stock, who's a student at USC. She's a neuroscience student. So it's going to be an interesting composite of ideas, and I love that project. Another project that I've been working on is my own longevity practice, and I was interviewed for a documentary that's doing really well. It's a short piece and it's almost embarrassing. It's very raw. You see me, as I am. Um, but it's already gotten over, I think, 250,000 viewers, and that's 250,000. So that's really kind of cool. Where I have not promoted it. I think I've mentioned it on LinkedIn and Facebook, but I'm not. Otherwise, I'm shocked. I mean, I think I posted, 200,000 people watching me who would care. So that's kind of fun. So those things are really always exciting. One thing that I'm just starting to work on, I'm sketching it out uh, from a strategic perspective, and that's picking up on my earlier 1996 future body design, which was called Primo 3M Plus, Third Millennial Culture Plus. It's just going to be human plus, no post-human, no transhuman. I think these terms derail us and bring us into political, social conflict rather than staying on course with human evolution and merging with technology. So that's going to be looking at artificial intelligence and AGI, artificial general intelligence, as well as nanorobotics for longevity and prosthetics, etc. So I'm very excited to be revisiting that early project, which I think that's been my most successful project I've ever done. It really, I had no expectations for it when I did it, and I just put it out, did an exhibition, wrote about it, and before I knew it, it was on the cover of magazines and newspapers around the world. It was like a flash. And so I think what's lovely about it is I wasn't trying to promote it. I wasn't trying to be an influencer. I wasn't looking for followers. It just happened. And I love that. So those are the wonderful things. A lot of stuff like that. But I do have concern about how to deal with some of the issues we talked about earlier, like the lack of empathy or the polarizations, the politizations, the people calling each other fascists. That's just awful, awful. Every time I hear that, or someone yelling at someone, it's just awful. And I want to just shut my ears to it and go, stop. Another thing I'm having difficulty with, and I'm not sure how to bring it into my work, is the perpetual advertising everywhere. You can't go on Netflix, you can't go on YouTube, you can't go on TV, you can't go anywhere without an ad interfacing or interjecting some product that you need to be aware of. And then I'm looking at artistically at the videos or the images that are used in these advertising mechanisms, and they're usually unpleasant. Someone yelling at you or someone who's unhealthy. And you and I are both athletic. And so that's something that I noticed, and not to be, you know, um, count anyone who's not physically fit or an athlete at all. It's just that I don't want to have to, I don't want it in as part of my life. So there's an over flaunting of body odor and in the crotch and on your arms right in front of you as you turn on the TV. And I find it so banal and so vulgar I don't know um, quite how to deal with it, but someone's got to, and I don't know who's going to finally say enough is enough of this vulgarity. Um, I listen to comedy a lot, and I in my car I have satellite radio. Thank you, Martine Rothblatt. She brought satellite radio to us.
Nice.
Um, and beautiful Martine Rothblatt, dear friend and love of my life friend. Um, but I put on the comedy and I just want to laugh with Bill Burr or yeah, just laugh. And it's gotten so vulgar talking about pussies and dicks and fucking, and it's just always in your face. And I find it so crass. I don't want to hear it all the time. So, along with the empathy issue that you mentioned earlier, another thing that I'm seeing is a desynthesizing of 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 I don't know. Maybe you can help me with this. It's a desynthesizing of our emotional response to where we're becoming so conditioned to hear words like fuck or talking about our genitalia or these terms like Nazi and all these words that are thrown at us from all sides and in the mainstream areas where those words may not be so acceptable based on laws and regulations for telecommunications, the Federal Communications, etc. But but then you're having underarms and crotches in your face. And I want to ask your view on this as someone who thinks about human nature and thinks about being skilled athlete, not only of your body, but of your behavior, emotions, your mind. What do you think that is all about?
I think it's a deconditioning of shame in our culture. And I don't want people to like walk around going, you should be shameful of your body and then beat yourself up. That's not what I'm talking about. I think privacy is being removed and shame is being removed.
No, I think it's good to have shame removed, but it's gone to an extreme in removing it.
And let me say when I say shame, and I don't want the government doing anything. Like I want the government as limited and small as possible. But I would say there's generally speaking, there's some behaviors that are probably best that most people don't participate in. And I think it's okay for some people to say you shouldn't do that. I don't think it's the best thing for you for your life. Like prostitution.
Mhm.
People should be free to be prostitutes if they're adults and they're making those
Sure.
decisions. I don't think it's the best thing for
Mhm.
women or men to be prostitutes. I don't think it's healthy. Dot dot dot. And I think it'd be okay for me to say to someone if they cared enough to listen to me. I don't think that's the best thing for you. I think there's other options for you. Let's help you find other options in your life. I don't want them to walk around shamed, like beat themselves up, but like whatever that would be to encourage them to think differently about how they live their lives, how they eat, how they move, how they relate to other human beings, their sexuality, all those things. Shame is not the best word. Whatever word like we replace
No,
that.
I think it's good. I think you touch on something here. So this overexposing of body parts and language that normally, whatever is normal, there is no norm, but uh, uh, in society or in different cultures, it changes, of course, but let's just take it at face value. Yelling at someone, calling someone a name, whether it's, you know, this or that or the other thing, it's just it's the act of yelling at someone. The word, the name is almost secondary to that. Someone thinks they have permission to yell at someone else just out of the blue.
Yeah.
Like we used to call them Karens during COVID. Remember
Yeah,
the
yeah,
women
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
were,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and I'm sure there was another term for the men who were doing it. But people are doing it on Facebook or, criticizing a politician that is not part of their political view and thinking that they're important for doing that on Facebook. I don't want to see that. If I want your political views, I'd rather go to you have a political page and then I can read about it. So it's in our face all the time. So you can't just get to Shakti Gawan or transcendental meditation or floating in the pool without it's almost you need to go into an isolation tank to be free of this
Right,
preponderance
right.
of spitballs in language, in visuals. Yeah, it's remember when Rodin, the sculptor, created the thinker or the
Yeah, yeah.
kiss? Beautiful, the thinker. What a beautiful image that is, or the kiss. These two pieces of sculpture are so reflective of a human sensitivity that is so beautiful. You look at it, you get that the thinker is thinking, contemplating something, or the kiss is about just a moment where two people come together.
Yeah.
Well, I heard today on the news that's whiteism. It's like that type of thing, and that's where I want to get over this hump, the siloed hump that we're in today, where people think they have a right to categorize you. Um, Maybe from their own shame. I don't know what it is, but I think that concerns me more than AI, the growth of AI. It concerns me more than
Very
climate
illiberal.
change.
It's a very illiberal way of
Yes.
operating in the world. Liberal, not in the political sense here in the United States, but the classical sense of liberal.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Traditional liberalism. Yeah. Classic liberal. Yeah. Well, your rights, you have a right not to be coerced, and you have a responsibility not to coerce others.
exactly.
And you let live and just learn to coexist.
Yeah.
That maturity of being and coexisting. We may not like something, but as long as it's not slamming itself in your face or throwing you spitballs, fine. And that's what I hope when I talk about the silos blending or melting to where there's this more interoperability between ideas and visions and practices, that it will become a more copacetic community.
The way I think about this is integrating dialogue and debate. Let's have a dialogue. We can have a debate, but in a classical sense of debate.
Yes.
An idea, you have an idea, and we go back and forth. Not I'm trying to beat you up and call you names. And
And I think you just touched on it. Speaking of Rodin, the kiss and the thinker, and looking at antiquity, going back to the Greeks and the Romans,
Mhm.
there was something called the Socratic method.
Yeah,
Socrates, you ask questions and you develop the question. The question debates were part of the town hall. You would come together and discuss things, and certainly there was a hierarchy, yes, but generally speaking, debates were part of the everyday conversation. And today, I would like to see more debates. In fact, I'm going to Doha, Qatar, to debate on longevity in a few weeks. It's going to be a very big debate, and I'm very excited about that. So I have to get my debating skills really honed nicely. But in a debate, you don't accuse people, you don't yell at people. You listen and you build off of the arguments, and you try to show the most logic or logos and reason.
100% agree. So, all right, you've named a really couple major cool things. Some of them are not yet out, but like if someone wanted to watch the documentary,
Oh,
how they find the documentary? Do you?
yes, I have to. Then this will be not a shout out to me. It's a shout out to the producer, the host of it, who's really quite a remarkable woman who I absolutely adore. Her name is Sierra Clark, and it's on her YouTube channel, and it is called Human. Mine is Human Plus, she's Human. So it's Human, and the particular video on me, you could just Google it. It's called I'm going to have to reveal my age, which I don't like talking about because I don't want to be sequestered into any particular generation. So be it. Uh, 75 and strong, because I'm 75 years old, and strong because it shows me working out with lightweight weights. We had to use a facility that didn't have great weights, so they look dorky, so don't laugh at it. They're not my weights, not what I use, but I had to use them. But it's really a very interpersonal experience, and it's very raw. I mean, yeah, it's pretty raw. So that's kind of fun. So that's the great video. She did a marvelous job.
How about your website?
My website is my name, Natasha Vita hyphen or dash more.com.
Well, I'll include all those things in the show notes.
Thank you.
Natasha, it's been great to catch back up with you. It's been way too long. Please do me.
Did I go too deep?
No, this is great.
Controversial. No, I thought, it's so many conversations, interviews, discussions like this. You just touch on the top of things. I want to get into some real core spots that were, so many people are concerned about, but don't talk about. I don't mind talking about them.
Which I think is wonderful. We need more of these kind of conversations.
Thank you, Michael.
You may favor tell Max I said hello.
I will.
Take care of yourself and good luck here in a couple of weeks in Qatar.
Thank you.
Take care.